Welcome to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. How do we learn to truly thrive together? How do we stay connected to our authentic selves, each other, and our purpose as a team, especially when challenged? How do we unlock the deeper levels of group intelligence? Enjoy this episode of the Connected Teamwork Podcast and learn practical tools to evolve the connectedness of your team to its next level.
Welcome to Connected Teamwork Podcast, episode 67, where we help teams discover how to connect more deeply to their innate potential and deeper intelligence. I'm your host, Hylke Faber. I'm here together with my co-host, Carson. Heady. Carson, how are you today?
Hylke, I'm always wonderful when I'm with you. Thanks for being here, and looking forward to the dialogue today.
Same here. And we're going to talk about the sixth one of the connected team practices. That is to walk in their shoes, accept and respect others, be curious and compassionate, and really think about people on your team as we go into this that you might not necessarily like, that you have a little bit of an irky relationship with, or maybe think of somebody you disagree. Use that person as your playground for this conversation today. I was the last 10 days in India working with clients there, and on my way home, I watched and rewatched the movie Gandhi. And Gandhi said something profound in the midst of severe skirmishes between all the religious groups in the country during independence. And he said, don't do an eye for an eye, because an eye for an eye makes you blind. An eye for an eye makes you blind. I think that's so true. So think about what happens when we don't practice accepting and really being curious about the other. I know that when I don't do that, I start to see my whole story about the other person. So in fact, I am blind. I am trying to force solutions. I am judging. The flow is gone. And afterwards, I feel pretty yucky about myself. How about you, Carson? How do you relate to this idea of an eye for an eye makes you blind?
Well, Hylke, I don't ever have conflicts with anyone. No, this is a great topic, and I couldn't agree more, because I think, and especially with time and experience, ideally comes wisdom, and it's critical to be able to meet people where they are, because often we are after very similar outcomes or desired outcomes, but our way of going about it might be different than those that we interact with. And to approach it from a situation where there's animosity or contempt, or frankly, even just being counterproductive with your actions, it's only going to lead to that blindness, as you said. I often go back to this text when it comes to how I work with folks, how to win friends and influence people. And I think today we can really dive into how can we, with a very set way that we feel like things could or should be done, how can we come to the table very open-minded, very inclusive, very seeking to learn from others, so that we can mutually go after desired outcomes.
And I love that. And I also want to pause for a moment and say humans in 2025 are hardwired to judge. Why? Because the primary function of our nervous system is not love or compassion or learning or any of those great things. It's to survive. And so my brain, when something doesn't go the way I want it to go, i.e., in a conversation, you tell me something that I do not want to hear, or we're going towards an outcome that's not what I had in mind, or you don't listen to me, or any of those kinds of things that are my expectations are not being met, my should is not being complied with, my crocodilian, my reptilian brain that we call also the crocodile will go straight into judgment. So to become empathetic, I think the first person we have to be empathetic with is ourselves, and saying, of course, Carson, when you disagree with me, my crocodile will start judging you. And not to deny that, but to say, yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. I first have to accept that. So tell me about, Carson, tell me about what's your experience with judging people? You probably never do it, right?
I try not to. Hylke, you've hit on something that's very important. And I think what I find with myself when I've come into situations and made judgments, it has typically been because of potentially a insecurity or an inadequacy that I view in myself. And so when I see someone out here with a different opinion, a different result, maybe someone who's beating me in a certain area, whatever it is, they're getting the praise, they're getting the recognition that I want. It's very easy for me to come in and try to pick apart what they've done and why they've done it, make an excuse for why they're successful in this area, why I'm not. And I found this to be the case as well in situations where I'm succeeding and others try to knock me off my pedestal, deserved or undeserved. And so I think what's critical, to your point, when we come into these situations and we find ourselves judging, is to realize, what is it? Why do I feel this compulsion or need to judge or to take away from their experience, their perspective, or whatever they're doing? Again, it's one of those things that over time and wisdom and experience, and frankly, just, humility, learning to be more open to other perspectives, and that there are, frankly, numerous ways to achieve the outcomes and the goals that we ultimately wish to achieve. Everybody's going to have their own unique way of doing that. And frankly, that's a good thing. There are things that we can learn, even from the people that we come in sometimes feeling predisposed to judge, and vice versa. In fact, I have had people that we had a lot of conflict and friction and tension in our working relationships that ultimately wound up being very, not only fruitful colleagues, but friends. Once we had really realized, hey, we're really after the same thing, shouldn't necessarily judge what they're doing and how they're doing it. Let me seek to understand, and vice versa. And sometimes we have to be the bigger person, because we may be in a situation where both parties are judging each other for very distinct reasons. Somebody is going to have to be the one to build the bridge to go across to the other person. So that is what I'm working on in myself, is to first understand, why am I judging in this situation? What is it about me? What is the area of opportunity for myself that I can learn from? And then frankly, being open to learning about that from this person.
Yeah. One thing I want to highlight is that the people we judge the most often have the potential to become our most deep friends and best collaborators. Why is that so? Well, think about somebody you judge. You probably judge because there's something that you care about that's going on between us. Maybe they're doing better than you. Maybe they're disagreeing on something you care about. Maybe you're not delivering, or they're not delivering on something that you both have agreed to. These are all things that you care about, and the intensity of your judgment is a function often of how deeply we care about things. So if we can turn that around and say, okay, I'm deeply judgmental, which means I must deeply care about the issue and probably also about the person. So if I can, then what I need to do is to say, okay, let me scrub. And this takes pressing the pause button. I call these days going to the beach. Breathe, encourage myself, accept that I have these thoughts, and choose higher wisdom. Like breathe, encourage, accept, choose higher wisdom. Go to the beach. Take a moment to go to the beach. Breathe, saying, okay, I have these judgments, I'm going to let them go. And I'm thinking about a colleague that I worked with this past week on the development of a game. And I was judging him. Why? Because I really want this game to get into the markets. It's a game about connectedness. And he wasn't doing what I wanted him to do. And yet we have a very big relationship. I also cared about it because, I thought, I trust this guy. I know he's going to do great. And then he's doing this. What's going on? Right? So the intensity of my judgment was a measure of my care. And so then it wasn't like my judgment was like poop, gone. But I chose to let it go, even though it didn't want to go away. What we resist persists. So I kind of allow it to be, let it go. And then I became curious, because that to me is a bridge to get out of judgment. Become curious about the other person. Thinking about, why did this person deliver what they did? Why is this person thinking about it this way? Why are they not just complying with what I want? Is it because they're out there to hurt me, which is what my crocodile thinks, my reptilian brain thinks? Or do they have another motivation? Probably, like most people, think far less about the other, with some exceptions, about how to hurt you, and far more about their own survival, their own values, if they're a little bit wiser, their own perspective and purpose, and act from that. So my task then is to become curious about that and say, okay, what do they care about? And lo and behold, we had that conversation, and I noticed that he also had some judgments towards me. So we had a bit of a conversation, a little clearing about that. It's like, when you say this, I feel this way. And he said, when you say this, I feel this way. It's like, okay, it's on the table. Now let's move on. And then we ended up in this very co-creative exchange. So what is your experience, Carson, with this opening yourself to the other person, curiosity?
What I loved about what you described, Hylke, is the necessity of curiosity, and also seeking to understand, having a conversation where you're not looking to, ask questions just to respond. You're not looking to do anything other than really just learn what is the state of the union between two people. You mentioned Gandhi, and I like to think about a lot of other leaders that potentially we hold universally in high regard. We live in a polarizing time, right? Where, people can judge based on who you voted for, what you believe, and hold all of those things and taking guesses about what people hold to be true just based on one fact. And it's based on a lot of different preconceived notions. And nearly everyone, has an agenda of some sort, right? And so, but some folks' agenda is pure, and it really is all about unifying. I think about Dr. Martin Luther King. I think about Gandhi. I think about Nelson Mandela. I think about Lincoln. I think about Churchill, Franklin Roosevelt, people that during these challenging times where there were very polarizing views and just uncertainty and ambiguity beyond normal comprehension, people that were able to not only keep a steady hand on the wheel, but also forge forward and be at and stay at the pulse of what was transpiring. Not everyone loved these people. Not everyone's going to love us. But what we've got to focus on is what can we control in these situations. And what we can control is how we show up and how we seek to proactively understand, and to your point, get it all out on the table. I remember one of the most challenging customer scenarios that I've ever had. And this was a customer that, refused to take a call, take a meeting. This was when I was a seller years ago. And I mean, they would literally say things like, I don't like vendors. I don't talk to them. You can talk to, my team if they'll take your call. This person would not take a meeting with me. I did a lot of internal discovery. I actually ended up going above this person's head. They were an executive, but I met with their board and their CEO and their CFO. And they ultimately forced this person to take a meeting with me while the CEO and the CFO were there. You can imagine this person was not thrilled with me when I did this. And they called me out and really tried to throw shade on me, literally sitting in the meeting where I had a team of people, including an executive that was senior to me, sitting at the table. And I said to this person point blank after they were finished, I'm not here to cause more challenges for you. And I understand where you're coming from. In fact, based on the work that I've done with your team that you encouraged me to meet with, I know what you're trying to do. And if I didn't believe that I could be a solution, I wouldn't be sitting here. And frankly, I would love nothing more than for you to tell me what looks like a win to you, what is going to be meaningful that I can sink my teeth into right now that would make meaningful change and a difference and impact of what you're trying to do with your team and your organization. And if I can't succeed, if this goes belly up, you don't ever have to take my call again. And they gave me a project to work on. Within a matter of weeks, we had successfully completed this. This turned into a very significant global deal, but most sellers, most people in my shoes would have backed down long ago. And I was willing to do what I felt like was the brave thing that I got paid to do, which was create this relationship, find a way to add value if we could, understand what this person was after. And the most important question that I asked him, Hylke, was what looks like a win to you? And if I can't be a solution to that, no harm, no foul. We can part as not friends. But in this case, we were able to find common ground. We were both able to partner around the same mutual outcome that we wanted. And we made sweet music together.
Beautiful. What looks like a win to you? We're going to explore this more after a break. While we're going to the break, keep thinking about those people that you disagree. Maybe they voted different from you, or they're on a different team, or that they just outdid you, whatever it was. Think about them and how you can apply this idea of choosing curiosity and letting go of judgment. See you after the break.
You are listening to the Connected Teamwork podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Do you want to learn more about building the next level of connectedness in your team? Please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the Connected Teamwork podcast. My name is Hylke Faber here with Carson Heady. So we're discussing getting out of judgment into curiosity, practicing this connected teamwork practice that is number 6, walk in their shoes, accept and respect others, be curious and compassionate. I also call this getting to the same side of the table, getting to the same side of the table energetically. Even if you're sitting in a virtual place like we're sitting right now, how can we energetically get to the same side of the table? So I want to take this into the societal context we live in these days, for a moment. Really think about those people that voted different from you. I think about them. And man, do I have judgment about them. I do. And yet, I had a conversation with somebody who voted different from me. I actually don't vote at the moment because I am not a citizen yet. And we got into it because we both knew this from each other. And we're both in the same line of work, coaching and facilitation, all that. And we got to what do we really care about here? Well, turns out we cared about staying connected with each other, really understanding where the other person came from. We cared about keeping our intelligence on, so not falling into these big labels or words. You are this, you're that. There's no intelligence in that. That's insane. That's my judgment. That is insane. It makes one blind. Those labels make you blind. It's turning on this. So what do you really care about? What do you want for this country? What can we do about this now? How are you working with the uncertainty? All of that, and make it personal. And when we got to the personal and the examples, and we start having a conversation as opposed to a condemnation, it was heartening and interesting what happened, Carson. Because when I'm in judgment, I'm actually in fear, because underneath the judgment is I've got to find a way to get this person to get it to my side, like my way of seeing. Otherwise, we're doomed. Which, of course, is an impossible task, and I know that. So when I'm able to relax that, when I'm able to be curious, when I'm able to go from condemnation to conversation, something in me changed. It's like, oh, wow, if we can have a conversation, then part of my work is to have conversations. And if we can have conversations together, we can get through this time, however uncertain it is. in a way that has dignity in it, has respect to it, and probably is a lot more effective than just turning off our intelligence and watching condemnation TV in our heads. What do you think, Carson?
It's powerful stuff. Hylke, I think about when these situations arise and relationships that we care about or relationships that we want to care about. I mean, look, I've had colleagues that I know I could learn from, but I could tell for whatever reason they didn't like me. Maybe they were intimidated by something I did or didn't do, or maybe they just didn't like me for other reasons. Just the ability or willingness to kind of come out and say like, hey, I feel like maybe there's some tension here. And I hope it wasn't something that I did, but I think that there's a lot I can learn from you. And I'd love to have a conversation. Conflict makes it feel like it's me against you. And the reality is not that. I don't think any of us want to be at odds with someone else. And so when you think about like sitting on the same side of the table and solving the problem together, it actually gave me this image about like when I go on a date with my wife, I like to sit on the same side of the table as her, right? This is a relationship I care about. Well, I care about other relationships in my work and in my personal life as well. Sit on the same table, same side of the table with the people that you want to learn from and grow with, just as you would with somebody that you want to build a closer personal relationship with. When you're frustrated in a situation, become curious and ask yourself, what's the pressure that this other person is feeling? Is it the same as yours? Do you feel pressure in these situations? Because people react and respond to pressure differently as well. So understanding those pressure points and what is maybe pressing down on this person that you would like to have a better relationship with can have an infinite value in turning the tide in that relationship. Curiosity is what is going to unlock the path to potential trust. Everybody is carrying an invisible battle, right? You're not going to know or see all the things that are transpiring. This person could be going through personal struggles, problems at home, problems at work, and you may not be able to know any of those types of things. And that's why it's critical that you come to the table really being curious about what could conceivably be putting this person into a situation where there's conflict between you and them, and there's any type of situation where judgment is transpiring, whether it's you or them or both. I would say, lastly, when I think about this, and kind of, I envision like building a bridge to people, but I would say empathy is ultimately going to be the bridge that's going to be between any two people. Sometimes that bridge is farther apart than we would like. So no matter how far apart that bridge is when you start, empathy is what's going to get you from point A to point B to reach that person. And that's where we have to begin.
Yeah. And when we do that, we can feel it. There's a sense of it. It's, for me, the beginning is often like, oh, you're not sure about this. And part of that is my fear that I'm not able to handle whatever the other person is going to do or not do. But when I'm able to ask a question, what do you need? What's going on? Tell me more. With confidence that the least I can be is to be present to it, even though I may not have a response. Because that's the other thing. A crocodile always thinks, I need to have a response. I have to be able to have a rebuttal. I have to be able to say something back. I have to relieve the person from the misery of their own opinion, like whatever it is. But if I don't give myself that burden, like I've heard it say, in my defenselessness lies my strength. Why? Because if I'm willing to ask any question, open myself to any perspective, then I can connect to anyone. Doesn't mean I'm going to be a pushover. Doesn't mean I don't have my own perspective. With this person I just talked about, who has different political ideas as I do, or with this person that is the designer. Okay, we have different ideas. I have mine, you have yours. Let's see what happens when they exist together, right? And that's when we get to the heart of conversation, which comes from the Latin conversatio, which means turning together. And I think our egos are so hell-bent to keep squarely in place, So So yeah, keeping some motion. One of the things I love about being in India is see how traffic moves. Everything's like it all moves. You kind of never know from which way and which side, but it moves. I think a great conversations like that too, and I think empathy is our navigation. If we navigate an empathy, can't go wrong. Carson, last few words from you.
Yeah, when I think about summarizing today's conversation, Hylke, walking in their shoes makes you a better teammate, better leader, better human. And you don't have to agree with the person in every situation. You just have to respect them. That's all. That's all it requires. Everybody's coming to the table with their own unique path and journey and experiences. And it's not up to us to judge that. There's a lot of value in mining these relationships and conversations for what we can glean. And you also can't purport to be the end all be all when it comes to these experiences. That's why it's critical that we're, seeking to understand, and we're learning from everybody that we meet and everybody that we touch. I think about this. When I was a kid, I just had this unbelievable reverence for the U.S. presidency. Right. I studied the presidents, every one of them. I'd read biographies, and I just meticulously knew every little in and out. And of both parties. I was reading these biographies, and I was just really obsessive about the presidents. And I always had a respect for the office. Now, don't get me wrong, as I've gotten older, sometimes it gets a little harder to have a respect for the office. But that said, there is still a reverence. Respect others. Show others that same level of respect, because guess what? They hold the same title you hold, human being. And that's why it's important that we hold everyone that we encounter in that level of respect. And then lastly, the best way you can honor that person is to sometimes sit with the tension, build bridges instead of walls. And you said something super, super important today, Hylke. And it was really all about, you said a lot of important things, but the one that I think jumped out at me the most is that this isn't going to just feel natural, because a lot of times we gravitate toward the easy, because we're also not hardwired to go in to do challenging things that build new muscle, but it's worth it. If we can sit in the chaos and the tension and the moment. I've got a line that I like to use sometimes with my team about their customers. If you can sit in the storm with your customers, they will walk with you in the sun. And that is true of other people as well. If you can sit in it, get through these hard moments, these crucibles are the types of things that can build very long-lasting, worthwhile relationships and connections.
When you can walk and when you can sit with a person in the storm, you will walk with them in the sun. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful way to think about this. Remembering also that in the storm, behind those clouds, there's always the sun. There's always the sun. In both people and everybody involved, don't forget that anybody here on this planet came as this beautiful baby that was probably admired by some people. It's like, oh, look at that. Let's not forget that the person that we are having disagreement with is equally worthy of love and respect as all 8 billion of us. That to me is strength, being able to see through that in the storm of whatever is going on. Thank you so much for listening. You've been listening to Connected Teamwork Podcast. I'm here together with my co-host Carson Heady. My name is Hylke Faber. See you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast. Thank you for listening. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Take a moment to reflect on what you learned today that can help build your team. Also, if you like, think about one of your team members and what you appreciate about them. Let them know. Enjoy connecting more deeply to what is great about them. And see you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast.